Hey everyone, it's your girl Maddie here, aka Beavermotch, and today I am joined by Andrew from Manipulator, whose latest record, Drawing Secret Circles, was just released a couple weeks ago. Andrew, thanks for joining me. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, well, Andrew, your second album is out now, and I got to ask, are you happy with the final product, and are you satisfied with the reception so far?
That is a good question. I am happy with it. It's one of those things where, you pour so much time and effort into something
Mm-hmm.
and you're always curious how it's going to turn out, and then it turns out completely different than what you expected, but in this case it was better. So it's a good thing.
Cool. Yeah.
In terms of reception, everyone that I've known that has listened to it has had great feedback. Yourself being interested is pretty cool. A handful of zines and whatnots online that have featured stuff. We had a actually did a video game with it,
Yep.
which we'll talk about later, and like that got a little feature in Decibel, so that was pretty exciting. Not just for me, but for the developer as well. So yeah, so far so
Yeah,
good.
what really drew my attention to you was there was the feature No Clean Singing that you got, which was
Sure, sure.
a website that I frequent myself. So yeah, that was cool to see.
Yeah, it was
Um,
pretty surprising. It's I worked with Dave from Earsplit, as you know, and he was able to connect a lot of dots and find some openings at some of these zines and whatnot, and people were excited about it, I guess. So pretty cool.
yeah, well, you are involved in other bands, and they're different than Manipulator. From my understanding, you have kind of a progressive tendency in some of your projects, and you dive into death metal sometimes. So, what drew you to want to have a grind project?
It's one of those like pandemic one man band kind of things where I was like, hey, this would be fun and kind of silly. And then
Mm-hmm.
as I started getting into it, it got less and less silly.
Yeah.
And like I like to say, or I've heard it said, like Manipulator is ridiculous and over the top, but not cheesy. Like it's funny because it's so crazy, but it's not intentionally funny. It's
Yeah.
like the obscurity is what makes it, you might go ha to, like that was ridiculous, as opposed to stupid lyrics or like goofy artwork or something like that. So
Mm-hmm.
it's like something that is both like I take very seriously, but is also like room to just absolutely purely have fun. That's the whole point, is fun.
Yeah. I mean, there's you look through, I've read some of the lyrics stuff. There's no like intentional, there's no jokes or humor, but you could tell, yeah, you're having fun with this. It is like over the top and in a way that I think is artful.
For sure, for sure.
Mhm.
Pretty much all the lyrics are actually written by my friend Tim, so I
Okay.
can't actually fully take credit for this being a solo project. He's someone I collaborate with in another online kind of remote project called This Is the Last Time, which is like
Hmm.
instrumental kind of epic metal sort of thing. Um, Old friend of mine, and he like does all the sample work and writes the lyrics and everything, and then I figure out how to place the lyrics, and then I will record everything through, then place vocals over it, and then send him that, and then he will basically go into his repository of samples that he's collected over the last however many months and figure out how to place them. And he does it in such a unique way where it's not just like a clip from a movie playing and then the song starts. He like almost plays them as like someone with like a keyboard, like
Yeah.
distinctly or like specifically putting them in places on the songs, and it just takes it to a level that is something I could never do. And every time he does it, the first time I hear it, I'm like, oh, this is too much, this is too ridiculous, and then like I sit for a minute, I'm like, okay, this is perfectly ridiculous. Like it's cool, it's very fun to work with him.
Now, in the intro to kind of our interview here, you did already mention it, but I do want to ask you about it. With this record, there is a video game attached to it. I like to play games when I listen to metal. Where did that
Cool.
idea kind of spawn from? How did it happen? What was the process of getting something like that done?
Have you played it by chance?
Not yet, but I absolutely will.
Cool, cool.
Yeah.
It's apparently it's a little hard to search if you go into the App Store or Google Play Store, or whatever. If you
Okay.
search Manipulator, just make sure it has an exclamation point at the end,
Okay.
and then it should come up. But basically, one of my old bandmates, PJ, um, he is a game developer,
Mhm.
and he's working on this amazing game that actually just came out a few weeks ago, right before this record. called Sword Car.
I'm familiar.
And you are okay, awesome. So he's a buddy of mine, and I pitched this idea of like, hey, do you want to make the most kind of like ridiculous like merch idea possible for this project? And he immediately said yes, which was exciting. So
Mm,
like Manipulator at this point has been, a online project. It's not a live scenario. Hopefully in the future it is. But I was just trying to figure out like, okay, so you know, what can I do to create a more interactive element to a record, just being, something that you only can hear the music of and not see live. And talked to him, and he was like, okay, awesome, like let's figure this out. And he kind of did that parallel with Swordcar, and like what he learned from Manipulator he implemented in Swordcar and vice versa, and we just kind of worked through it over the last like year or so up until the release date. And yeah, I'm pretty excited about it. Super fun. Just kind of like, simple side scroller game, but like the aesthetic aspect of it is what I'm so proud of. Like it looks weird, like this old like CRT monitor on a handheld, and like it just feels Manipulator while still being a little bit sillier than
yeah.
most of the art and music side. So yeah, pretty pumped on
I
it.
I did do interview probably a couple months ago with a band called Soul Mask where we dived into the topic of like the intersection of video game culture and metal, and there is definitely like an overlap. So I think it made sense for people who are interested in your project to at least have some people that are also like, I want to play a game too. And I think that's
Sure.
an interesting idea that I think more bands to maybe look into.
It seems like it's becoming more of a thing. And like we sat down and talked with Decibel, a few weeks ago, and they were talking about, yeah, like bands are starting to have this idea of an additional aspect to everything. And honestly, like if you take almost any metal song and turn it into an 8-bit song, it just sounds like Castlevania. So like it's the music's already there. You just,
Yeah.
yeah. Which is actually cool. When we built this out, I had written everything already like to MIDI. Like
Yeah.
not having real drums is kind of what you're stuck with. But then having that whole everything mapped out already, I was able to just create an 8-bit version right away. So when you are playing the game, you can switch to 8-bit and really have like a retro feel. And then you don't have to listen to me screaming, which is probably more pleasurable for a lot of people.
I love like old RPGs or like Legend of Zelda, the classics, and you can tell the soundtrack already kind of has tie-ins to Dungeon Sith, which is like very much a metal culture. So there is, it
Yeah,
just like it seems
exactly.
like it's so natural.
Yeah, it's definitely a natural's perfect way to say it for sure.
And being you kind of putting yourself forward to this online project, there's also this it's like a real multimedia thing because there's also a music video you did for the entire project.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
I have a tendency to just create too much work for myself for what, I mean, all of this is obviously like labor of love, but
Yeah.
yeah, it was funny. Like I actually just had a kid 2 years ago, and
Oh
during
wow.
like the first few months of that, I was up all hours of the night, and in that little bit of free time I have, I was just like running around my apartment, like silently screaming into my iPhone, like creating these videos and just like mashing things that I found online and videos I took, and just building this whole deal, I guess. And then yeah, I actually did like a art book that comes with it too, and all of
Hmm.
the songs. Each song, has its own like image or piece, which kind of ties into the music video. And then also each level of the video game is based on one of the songs, so that artwork comes back in the background and stuff. So it's all kind of loosely tied together. So
Sure.
yeah,
Yeah. Well, let's talk about the music itself.
sure.
21 songs in 27 minutes. So that's a grind thing. That sounds very grind. Now, I know intellectually and studying like metal and punk history why the micro song, in grind exists.
Sure.
But like and like why creating an album in short bursts is a part of the culture. But in your own words, could you maybe explain or tell my audience why you think short songs and like having a lot of them on a record is so appealing for fans of grindcore?
I mean, like the concept kind of started as it literally is just kind of hilarious.
Hmm.
But then when I started building it out, it allowed, I don't know, just a way, like the whole idea with Manipulator, like some of the past bands I've played in. I used to play in a band called Sunless, if you're
Hmm.
familiar. Like we're talking like crazy epic songs that, for me personally took like months to learn how to play. And then with Manipulator, it's like, okay, I can get an idea and I can get it out in a matter of like minutes potentially.
Yeah.
So that kind of transfers over into the music of like, I want to explore a concept for as absolute like what am I trying to say? As small amount of time as possible. Like, or never like beating something over the head until you know what I mean. There's just like so the short song aspect is just like, okay, this is a concept and it's done.
Yeah.
But then on other parts of the album, it's like, okay, well, this one doesn't make sense to do that way. So it's drawn out. And I guess lyrically too, it just like having, I think there's 5 songs on the album that are tied together. And then like it's literally the lyrics are the titles of them, so it like reads like that almost as opposed to traditional. So I don't know. There's no real insight into it other than it just
Yeah.
being fun.
Well, I mean, the classic example, which at this point has almost become like memeified, but like it started with like "You Suffer" by Napalm Death, but really
Yeah.
just like trying to get so much like meaning into just like as little bit of time with the little least amount of lyrics, just brevity became pretty inspiring. A lot of bands tried it. Well, can we do our own "You Suffer"? And I think that has carried on through.
It definitely seems to be a theme. There's just something so fun about it. Or like when you see
Mm.
a band live and like the drummer, counts the song in and the count in is longer than the actual song. Like they're
Yeah.
hitting the china, and then I don't know. It's just yeah, it's
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah. It's ridiculous and in the best way possible.
Perfect. Exactly.
Yeah. Um, it's interesting because I was going to ask you about it, that you mentioned Sunwest, because I was going to ask out of my own curiosity. I
Sure.
live in Minneapolis, and that band is based here. Do you have roots in the cities? Because I know you're in New York now.
I'm actually literally in Minneapolis right now.
Holy
So
shit!
that's pretty funny. I'm on Chicago and 27th at the moment. So I don't know how close that is to you, but that's
You
pretty
are
funny.
extremely close. That is
Uh,
hilarious.
we could have done this in person.
We could have, yeah,
I couldn't do the obscured profile
yeah.
though; it'd be harder. Um, yeah, I used to live in Minneapolis for a while,
Okay,
and so like I just met up with a couple of those guys the other night, and we're chatting and everything. Yeah, it's
yeah.
it's nice to see them. I haven't lived here in what 5 or 6 years. Lived in Chicago for a bit, and then New
Okay.
York, and then actually the last year, my wife and son and I have been basically traveling the entire year. We are lucky enough to work online, so we worked our way like through Central and South America into Europe and everything, and somehow maintaining music and jobs and whatnot through it all. And yeah, it's been wild. So just seeing some family here.
Yeah. Are you gonna stop in extreme noise while you're here?
Probably not, but I should.
Okay.
I don't think I have time. Right after this, I got to get back to work, and then we're actually driving
Yeah.
out tomorrow morning. So
Cool. Well, it's a cool thing we have in this city. We have a
it
very
is. It
metal
is.
punk focused record shop that I visit frequently.
Oh yeah, I've been there a number of times back when I used to live here.
Hmm.
I can't remember what albums I was picking out. Probably Trap Them or something like that.
Sure. Well, you also are a visual artist. You design work for other bands under the company Hollow Dust. Do you want to tell me a little bit about what you do with that project of yours?
Sure. I mean that name is basically just me, but the art form.
Yeah.
Um, I do graphic design for my day job and then also I guess for my night job.
Hmm.
And yeah, luckily I've done all the album art for Sunless, luckily. I still do that with them. I still write the lyrics for them. They've allowed me to continue being part of that, though we're separated
Oh,
by many miles.
tight. Yeah.
Um, which also frees up Lucas to think about the music differently, which he seems to really appreciate. And like music and the vocal aspect of it, being able to actually
Hmm.
concentrate on the musical side. But yeah, it started actually in Minneapolis. I was just going around. I think I got a new phone that had a decent camera, and I was taking pictures and just throwing like super dark black and white filters on them. I was like, oh, this is cool. And then eventually it just evolved into, okay, this is, my art account or whatever. And then
Yeah.
yeah, doing um doing posters, doing, merch items for different bands and whatnot. And it's fun. It's been cool.
Are there any band you've worked with that you are particularly proud of?
I mean, I'm proud of the work with Sunless just because of how
Yeah.
exceptional of a band they are. Like, and just watching their evolution over the last few years. And it's so cool having been in the band and then like going to see them live, which I've haven't done since the new album came out, but it's like, oh yeah, that's so cool to see this on the opposite side of stuff. It's like an experience that
Yeah.
I don't think a lot of people get to have, and it's pretty cool. Um, yeah, I would have to like think back through everything. Yeah, that would be my answer. Sunless.
Cool. Yeah. And with that, you doing design for other bands, you've also designed the art your for this record yourself. What was kind of going on through your head when you came up with this cover?
Basically, when I start making artwork for projects like this, or really anything that is, not my day job, I will basically just gather a ton of imagery that I think
Mm-hmm.
looks cool. Like I'm literally just digging through the internet or through books or anything, grab as high resolution as possible. I love big crispy images. Then of course I destroy, but it's nice to have good source material. And this imagery just had, it was so haunting to me. And it's one of those things where it like, yeah, okay, like it's weird using a picture of, a deceased person, but I'm hoping that they will forgive me at some level somewhere. But it's actually a moral quandary I was reading about the other day. Someone was talking about like grind albums and stuff and having, stuff like that. And can you wear that on a shirt? And is it okay? And like, it's like, yeah, it is actually pretty weird when you think about it. Like, it's a picture of a mummy.
Yeah.
It's not identifiable, and it's like manipulated and whatnot to a point of unrecognition. But I guess it is kind of something
Yeah, I've
interesting.
never thought about that myself either. But yeah, that is a thing that exists.
Yeah, for sure. I mean,
Yeah.
especially within these genres, if
Mm-hmm.
it's an actual photograph or something, but I don't know. I'm not too worried about it at this point. But yeah, it was just something that honestly, like when I make artwork, like for this album or the album previous or like the other like split that I've done and whatnot, it's just I'm looking for of I hate to use this term, like a vibe. I keep hearing people saying like, oh, that's a vibe, and I hate when it's used that way. But um but like quite literally, just does this make me feel like the music? Does this feel like it ties in? Is this a correct visual representation, I guess? So yeah, that's pretty much it.
As a music journalist who like is kind of my job to describe music, when I hear like, oh, we need to play music that is vibey or sets vibes, I'm like, that's such a lazy classification. What does that mean? That's such a
Yeah.
open-ended term that can
Yeah, it
mean
literally means
literally
nothing.
anything. Yeah.
Exactly. What vibe do you want to feel like you're about to
Yeah.
be murdered, or do you want to dance? Both are great.
uh well, I love talking with bands when I bring on the show about just kind of going in the past and talking about favorite records. And doing grind. Do you have some grind records that you are particularly fond of? I'll tell you right
Oh
now, I
man.
have the Insect Warfare poster right behind me.
Oh, cool, cool.
Yeah.
I honestly like I wish I was more versed in music in general. I have a very
Mhm.
hard time like even talking about, metal or subgenres because there's just so much and my brain has a hard time cataloging it.
Sure.
If that makes sense. It's like, oh, I know something, I recognize something when I've heard it, but I don't necessarily know, oh, that's this band, that's when they had this guitarist, this vocalist, etc., etc., etc.
Mhm.
That being said, I have been kind of obsessed with the band Gravesend.
Oh
If
yeah.
you're familiar with them at all, which I think there's like a good kind of tie-in being both like these New York inspired things, just gnarly stuff. Absolutely love that. And
Mhm.
I've been listening to a lot of Harm's Way actually the last
Okay.
few weeks because I've been trying to retrain my vocal cords so that I can actually do this thing live at some point in the next year.
Mhm. So
And so
you
yeah,
plan
it
on
just
taking Manipulator on the road?
I don't know if it'll be a road band, because all of the musicians I have lined up are parents, so it's going to be a probably East Coast, and then maybe we can do 2 or 3 day weekends, Philly or Jersey, etc., and then the one-off show out of state and whatnot. Yeah, we'll see. I mean, it's one of those things where we've all started learning the music, but we're all geographically separate.
Yeah.
And so hopefully within the next few months, we can all kind of, like, once we're back in New York and everything, get into a space, and hopefully it doesn't sound terrible. We'll see.
If it's okay with you, something I love doing on this show that it's a little fun is I love asking about food. And you really interest me here because you now knowing that you were from where I'm from and moved to New York, can you compare the food scenes of those two cities?
Yes. And I'll do a two-parter because I'm back in Minneapolis for this week. Um, I've always thought that in the Midwest, your dollar goes further.
Oh
So
yeah.
like living in Manhattan, it was like, okay, so really Chinatown is the only place you can get, like, outside of a few other spots, like a good deal on food. You have to go to Brooklyn, or especially Queens is where everything is. I think Minneapolis has awesome food. I had Modern Times for breakfast. It was wonderful.
One of my favorite restaurants.
It's great.
Yeah.
Um, I think it comes down to um, New York just has so many options.
Mhm.
For good and bad. Like, there's always decision paralysis there, of course. But I've always been very impressed with the food and other consumables that are coming out of here. I've always joked that, like, yeah, you can't go outside for 5 or 6 months, so everyone just like perfects their craft. That's why there's so much good music from here
Mhm.
and so much good food and everything, because everyone's just stuck inside. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. But um, yeah, I will say though, like, now that we've been back, everything here seems way more expensive than it used to be. And
Hmm.
we also haven't been in New York for most of the year too. So maybe everything's also gone up there. But I keep going to the coffee shop and being like, these are New York prices. I thought I was in the Midwest. What's going on?
I
I
uh
don't know.
I I work in a coffee shop in Minneapolis, and I could tell you I have seen those prices rise for the
Yeah,
past 5 years that I've been working in the industry. So yeah, you are not off on that.
sure.
Uh,
I will say though, I went to was it Union Hmong Kitchen recently,
okay.
and it was so good. Like, it was just awesome. So big props to that. And what else did I have recently? um I got this delicious non-alcoholic hop tea at Inbound Brewing that was like ridiculous. It had all these like weed terpenes in them. Like, it wasn't psychoactive, but it was just
Yeah.
so tasty.
So that's an interesting thing about like Minneapolis specifically, and I'll tell you why that is because the Republicans hold the Senate in Minnesota, but
Right.
there was a bill passed where they like all of the Republican senators like misread it, and they accidentally made THC edibles in Minnesota legal. So from what I can say, you can't smoke weed legally here, but you can go and buy a beer with THC. So now there
Yeah,
are all these companies specializing in like
yeah,
THC
it's
infused seltzer. It's
everywhere.
amazing. Yeah. It's really
I
funny.
That's hilarious. I was curious about this because like, I was talking to someone last night, and there's like the different chemical compounds or whatever, and like one of them that was previously legal pre that legalization, so they like switched over and everything. But yeah, I see it everywhere here, and it's just wild. I wish I enjoyed that that stuff.
Yeah. I I heard I've had a conversation with someone who was visiting from Portland, and they said we're visiting Minneapolis specifically for these THC drinks because they don't really need to do them in Portland, but it's like a specialty that we can only get in Minneapolis, and I didn't know that. It's just like around me everywhere. It's really
Yeah,
funny.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, I was really surprised by it. It was just like going to a restaurant. Oh, THC drinks. Go to a brewery. THC drinks. It was just
Yeah,
everywhere.
yeah, you can get them at liquor stores. Yeah, they're everywhere.
Sure, sure.
Uh,
Cool.
well, I'm going to If it's okay with you, I want to quote you about one of the songs on this record, one of the tracks that was released early for the mask you made, and
Okay.
you said, and I'm going to quote simply, "This song speaks to the fake faces people wear to convince you that they are something far greater than the truth." And now, when I read that, my mind goes to: Are we talking politicians? Are we talking about media figures? Did you want to elaborate that, or is it something that you want to keep open ended, which is totally fair too?
I mean, it's all of the above. I think like Tim wrote those lyrics, but I also have my interpretation of them. But I
Mm-hmm.
think that specifically was just talking about people in like his and I's personal life.
Yeah.
Honestly, like people that we had been talking about, that are appear to be one way, and then when it actually comes down to needing help from someone, or actually having to rely on someone, masks off and you see the true colors underneath. And unfortunately it's very common. I feel like with if you're
Mm-hmm.
if you're saying politicians and stuff like that, that's you know we all know that. But then
Yeah.
when it comes down to like personal relationships and people you invest time into and effort, and then yeah, you realize, oh, that's actually not the person I thought it was, and just how frustrating that is.
Yeah. Everyone, like, people seem to have these double sides. There's like a performance, especially anything that's like highlighted with social media. There's like a
Oh yeah,
part that's
absolutely.
performed, and there's like a fake side of you that you like act out when you're not in the limelight. And
For sure.
it's an interesting
And I mean,
topic to dive into.
it is. And I mean, like, it's not always a bad thing. And I mean, this scenario, it's talking about bad stuff. It's like obviously, if I am in a work meeting or something, I am not going to have the same conversation I'm having right now. You know,
Yeah.
if you're talking to people of from a different country, there might be certain things that are taboo, or that you're trying to be
Mm.
sensitive about culturally, that you might just not bring up. And that's not a bad thing at all. But in this scenario, yeah, it's talking about people bullshitting you.
Yeah, and you bring up an interesting point too, because like you in the music industry and other bands I've talked to, and myself, who is like a media figure in terms of talking about YouTube, like there is a performance we're putting on. Like I am this on a camera, but obviously I can't always be talking about the things I'm talking about
Yeah,
in
for
my
sure.
personal life. And they're I mean, I don't think that's a bad thing, but it is a reality. We all have that.
Oh yeah, definitely. I
Yeah.
think that's I think that's important too, is being multifaceted, especially in terms of like conversation. Like
Hmm.
I get frustrated when a conversation is obviously not in an interview, but when a conversation is only about one thing, only about music, only about whatever, like that to me gets tiring. So I actually like that you're bringing in other questions and whatnot. But this is also a
Hmm.
music interview, so that's perfectly acceptable.
Yeah. Well, I asked you about grind records, but I kind of want to expand that question a little more. And you mentioned Harv's Way, but what are some other records that have come out recently that you are particularly enjoying?
um, I've been listening to the most recent Artificial Brain a lot too. Um, I'm like scrolling through my Spotify quick. Yes, I know I shouldn't use Spotify, but oh, there's are you probably familiar with the band Worn Mantle?
Hmm.
They're from Minneapolis. They just released an album on Ordovician Records, which is actually me and Lucas from Sunless's label.
Okay.
He does all the talent procurement and handles all the money, and then I just do like art and layout stuff. It's perfect. um, but yeah, they released this like monolithic, like well, I think like 70-minute long album, and it's like in two pieces, and it's just so well done and ridiculous, and yeah, just super cool. I'd love to see them in a live capacity at some point.
You
Um,
mentioned Artificial Brain, and they're going to be playing at Maryland Death Fest, which I'm going to, which I am very excited to catch that set.
nice, nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what they're like with the new vocalist. I always got a kick out of the fact that the old vocalist name was Will Smith, because that's just so funny to me.
Yeah.
But his little dance moves on stage and stuff are just incredible. So it'll be fun. It'll be fun,
Yeah.
I'm sure.
Cool. Did you have any other ones you wanted to name drop, or those kind of the two main ones?
There's so many. I learned
Yeah.
about a band called Agriculture recently, which I really like.
I'm
If you're
familiar. Oh
familiar with
yeah.
them, yeah. Um, like I love the idea of like positive metal, like because like it's something that usually when it's done it just sounds really cheesy, but in this case it just felt so real and like beautiful. I don't know, like the music I make is, obviously Manipulator is over the top and it's obnoxious, but like the whole idea is channeling negativity for the sake of positivity. Like
I think that's what like a thing that metal's good for. I mean, I've talked about like
absolutely.
when you listen to death metal, like I don't, I don't. It's not like I'm like relating to the lyrics, but there's an aggression to me that's like being let out, and I can kind of
Exactly.
explore my dark side in a very positive way.
Yep. Exactly. Like that's a perfect way to describe it. Or like,
Mm-hmm.
in the same way that we enjoy listening or watching a horror movie, we might enjoy listening to a certain album because it creates the same feelings. Or and it's like, why do we like that?
Yeah,
It's exciting. It's like a roller coaster, you know. It's intended to scare you, but be safe. And there's something interesting about how that taps into our
that's a
psyche, and
great way to phrase it. Yeah,
it says something about our like the ease of our modern society as well too. And like I think that's a good thing. Like if we've gotten to a point in society where we have to scare ourselves to have fun as opposed to just being scared, like that means something's working in terms of taking care of each other to some degree.
I watch like highlights of like the political debate, and that's scary.
Oh
Watching like
yeah.
those people talk, that is I don't you don't need to like have any like special effects. That is horrifying.
I mean, the difference though is that it does have an actual effect on you, and that's
Yes,
that. Whereas like a horror movie, like actually can't hurt you other than maybe some bad dreams or lost sleep.
for
But
sure.
but yeah, I hear you for sure.
Well, Andrew, I don't have any other questions written down, but I do, before I let you go, want to give the floor to you for any last thoughts, words, or any plugs. Like the floor is yours, so go ahead.
I should have thought of this ahead of time. I'll just say thanks to the like all the labels that have helped me out with
Sure.
these last couple of releases. Wise Grind Records, Dead Red Green Records, Here's Nowhere Records,
Mm.
Psychonaut Records, and I believe that's everything. And I will say definitely check out the Manipulator game if you can. It's free. Um, it would be awesome if you leave a review on it. It really helps PJ out with his development side of stuff. And check out Swordcar as well. I think it's like $5. It's on if you type in devilmaycar.com, it'll take you to the Steam page.
And the manipulator game work is that on people is that on Steam or is it on the App Store? Where can people find that?
Sorry, that's App Store or Google Play Store. I think there will
Cool.
be a Steam port at some point, but I'm not sure about that. So
Sure.
I mean,
Eh,
you have to play it with your hands. It just
yeah, yeah.
feels correct because it's like intended to look like an old controller. So
And I'm assuming
yeah.
your music, Bandcamp.
Yep. Yep. We've
Yeah.
got manipulatorgrind.bandcamp.com. And I mean, you can grab stuff on Spotify everywhere, everywhere that
Mm.
streams, it should be available. But if you do want to pick up a record or something, we've got these cool purple ones and like gray ones of the new album, as well as that art book and whatnot. And then there's there's like a split release we did a few months ago as well with a band called Mulciber and a band called Stench Price. You can check that out too on the Bandcamp. So yeah.
Awesome. Well, Andrew, thanks for joining me. I had a ton of fun getting to chat.
Yeah, me too.
For everyone watching at home, my name is Maddie, aka Beaver Mosh, and I am signing off.